Welcome to the Exploring Potential podcast, where we delve into the realm of unique and novel ideas within organizations. Join us as we uncover the driving force behind innovation and success by engaging in thought-provoking conversations and stories with some of the brightest minds in various fields. Hey everyone, thanks for joining us and a warm welcome to the Exploring Potential podcast. I am your host, Brett King. We've got an amazing guest joining us today, but before I get to them, let me tell you a little about our focus for today's episode. We're going to dive into something that I'm personally very passionate about, and that is the power of positive thinking and positivity, not just at a personal level, but at an organizational level. This is not going to be just full of fluffy feel-good talk with no action. We're going to cover some real impacts and real tangible ways to make this powerful practice work for you and for your organization. So let me hit you just kind of right off the bat with a business implication before we go any further. There was this really great article in the Harvard Business Review not too long ago that described this study done at MetLife, the giant insurance company. And the study was conducted by Dr. Martin Seligman at the University of Pennsylvania. And what this study found is that optimistic sales professionals outsell their pessimistic counterparts by 56%. 56%. That's absolutely huge. And what we're talking about, really, it comes down to a mental outlook. That's the difference. The results of this study actually made such an impact at MetLife that they actually changed their hiring practices to include screening for optimism, which, according to the article, improved employee retention and saved the company ultimately tens of millions of dollars. I'm sure based on that 56% difference in sales, it also made them quite a bit more money as well. That would just be my guess. At the end of the day, the hard truth for us is, as humans, we've got this negativity bias. We're actually literally wired to react more to negative stimulus than to positive. Have you ever wondered why that one negative comment sticks with you more than the 10 positive ones? Or why the sprinkling of rain on a sunny parade captures our focus more than anything else? Negativity bias is basically our brain's little quirk that makes it latch on to negative experiences more than positive ones. So if you picture this, you roll out a fantastic new product feature, new service, whatever it is. 99 reviews sing its praises, but that one lone wolf saying, meh, that's the one that keeps you up all night. Why? It's not because we're gluttons for punishment, right? We don't enjoy that. It's just due to evolution. Back in the caveman days, overlooking a threat like, let's say, a saber-toothed tiger could be possibly your last mistake. So our brains evolved to prioritize these negative cues in our environment over positive ones. Survival first, happiness somewhere down the line. But fast forward to our boardrooms today, and this bias can actually sabotage success. Fixating on negatives can stifle innovation, demotivate teams, and warp decision-making. More significantly, it can impact our personal health and well-being. Hopefully by now, we agree there is great power in positivity and positive thinking. But because of the negativity bias, we have to work extra hard at staying positive. This leads us right to today's guest, my friend and positive thinking embodied, Bob Hoffman. Bob has over 30 years experience as a PR and marketing professional. He's a storytelling enthusiast driven by passion for impactful narratives. Bob is an acclaimed motivational speaker and coach and conducts interactive workshops statewide throughout the state of Michigan. His signature workshop, The Power Within, Fueling Your Passion, unleashes inner potential, propelling attendees towards their aspirations. Now, I've known Bob for a while. I know him from working together in television many years ago. And his media journey began as an anchor, and he's now hosting two shows, Morning Blend and Good Neighbors, both on Fox. Bob is also the creator of ePIFanyNow, a kindness initiative, because as you will soon learn, he is also the embodiment of kindness. It is my pleasure to introduce my friend and spreader of positivity, Bob Hoffman. Bob, welcome to the show, and thanks so much for joining us.
Oh my gosh, thank you so much for having me. I love what you're doing, and I love the studies that you talked about at the very beginning. And It's absolutely incredible and true. So thank you.
It's, I appreciate that. And I think it's kind of tees up why this is such a powerful discussion, right? The power of positivity. Um, Before we get too far into that, I do want to stop and just ask, Bob, could you tell us just a little more about, your history, your career focus, kind of your background? What brought you to where you are today?
Yeah, growing up, I grew up in a household where the news was extremely important. When I was a kid, my mother, a single mom, lived with my grandparents, and my grandpa watched the evening news. And we always had to sit and watch the evening news and be quiet. For a kid, that was kind of hard. But um, I soon really learned to love information and love what they were doing. And as an early child, I sort of latched on to reporters who really told a story that was positive, or a story that was impactful for humanity. Bob Dotson is my hero from NBC. He told these incredible stories that captured me, and I sort of was like, I want to do what Bob Dotson does. I want to tell these amazing stories. And I was at the same time, I didn't like the negative things that were happening. And as a kid, I noticed the pattern. I noticed that news is really negative, and I didn't like it. But there was this positivity that I really loved. And so I knew, like, from 8 years old, that I wanted to tell good stories, and I wanted to be a storyteller. And I'm also really inquisitive and curious, and everyone has a story, and I want to hear people's stories. I ask a lot of questions.
That's so well put. And Bob, you brought up news, and you and I share that experience. We have both worked in the news in the past, and I was thinking about this as I was preparing for our discussion today, and about my experience. I was more behind the camera. I was this is new for me, being on this side of the camera, but as a producer, right? It was obvious what we were putting out, right? And it goes back to that negativity bias, because at the end of the day, this is nothing against news. There's a time and place, and it's very important for people to be informed. But at the end of the day, there is a bit of a negativity bias that gets played off of, because that's what, that brings in the most eyeballs, and that's what sells the advertising. And so what I love about your story and what you shared is, you're like, I want to reach these people, but I want to tell these good stories. And I think, that is something you have done over the years and that you continue to do. And I think it's such a service to, honestly, the service to the world. I think it's a service to everybody around, right? That you're focusing on that, and not, what is the, I hate to even use this term, but some of the news term is like, if it bleeds, it leads, right? That's
Totally,
the first thing you
yeah.
see.
I think it's changing a little bit. At least some newsrooms are changing with that. Um, I think is it impactful? Then it leads. How is it impactful to people?
Mm,
How is it infecting them? At least the newsroom that I'm in, and Scripps, which is an incredible company, uh,
yeah,
as far as media goes, they're really looking at that neighborhood impact and the people, and how it affects the people. And so it's not just like, oh, there's a car accident, there's a murder, there's a, how does this impact somebody? Why is this important? So, um,
love that.
which is great. I think it's changing a little bit, which is good.
Absolutely. That's an evolution. That's a positive evolution,
Yeah.
and by no means am I anti-news in any
Oh
way.
yeah,
Right? We
no.
need people to be informed. It's critical, especially local news. Huge proponent of it. We need that. So yeah, that's. But again, looking at somebody like yourself who's really dedicated their time to telling these wonderful, positive stories about people in the neighborhoods doing good things for each other. Things like that. It's just that's we need that. And it's just amazing that you've been providing that for your audiences, for
Thank you.
all of us. So kind of fast forward to today, what is your relationship with the power of positive thinking? How does that show up in your life?
Oh my gosh, every day. Positive thinking is like exercise. The more you do it, the easier it becomes, and the effects are noticeable. When you start, if it's not natural to you, it's hard. You work at it, and I work at it. I mean, I'm not always positive. I work at it, but I've seen the benefits of it. I'm creating those neural pathways in my brain that look at the positive instead of looking at the negative, because I know what happens when I look at the negative, right? And I don't like the consequences of that. I feel drained. I feel angry. I feel tired. I feel upset, emotional. If I can look at something positive and I can see there's opportunity for growth, there's a learning lesson involved, there is something that maybe I need to learn, and just be grounded a little bit. For me, it works. I'm not saying it works for everyone, but for me, that's what I've decided that I needed to do.
That's excellent. So from your perspective, Bob, how does positive thinking, and I know you've touched on this even in your last answer, but how does positive thinking affect us at a personal level?
Oh my gosh. Think about the conversations that you have in your head every day. We're constantly talking to ourselves. We're constantly saying things. How are you doing that? Are you beating yourself up, or are you encouraging yourself? Most of us beat ourselves up. Most of us say horrible things that we never even say to anyone, but yet we say it to ourselves. And you do that over and over and over and over throughout a lifetime until you're even an adult. You know, it starts when you're a kid, and when you're an adult, it's no wonder a lot of people don't have confidence. It's a lot of no wonder people don't live their dreams, because they have told themselves over and over and over they can't, instead of saying I can, or I choose to, or I will get through this. You know, every goal that I've ever had in life has been like, at the beginning, it seemed insurmountable, yet you do it one step at a time and you achieve your goal. You will do it. Um, one of the best books, and I knew we were going to have this conversation, so I wanted to bring this book to your attention. And it's an old one, but it's called um, "What to Say to Yourself," and it's when you talk to yourself, by Dr. Chad Helmstetter. And it was this book that really opened my eyes to the conversation that I was having in my head, and I still have. I mean, I'm not going to say that I am Mr. Positive all the time, because I don't think that's even attainable. But I try to live my life that way, and I catch myself all the time. I catch myself in the thoughts that I'm thinking. And it does get easier, though. It does get easier the more you do it. It's like I said, that exercising your thoughts and exercising being positive. For me, the ramifications are great. For me, um, things have gotten better in my life since I've been doing that. I've been doing this for 25 years, and um, it's not easy at first, but the more you do it, the easier it gets, and you'll notice differences. You'll notice that you feel better. You actually, you even are more healthy. Your face clears up. You have less stress in your life. You know how to handle the stress when you do have it. And one of the things that I always say to myself is, it's not brain surgery. Nobody's going to die. You know?
That's so well put. I think a lot of times we can, in our own heads, build something up to be so significant when in reality, to your point, it's not brain surgery, right? It's not brain surgery. Somebody's life is not on the line in this situation.
Right. Right.
We build it up to be that, and I've had conversations with our team here at work, where, if like work starts piling on, I say, look, I love this company. I founded this company. Of course, I'm in love with it, right? I love everything we do. At the same time, like, we aren't out saving lives, right? Like we do believe the work we do is important, but it's always grounding to, like, I love how you put it, it's not brain surgery.
Right.
Nobody here is at risk of losing their life. It's, it's all going to be okay.
Right. Right. And when you have that positive mindset too, when you encounter those stressful situations, it helps you process it a little more. It helps you acknowledge those emotions that you're having, and it helps you prepare for it and listen to what's happening. And it really, I think, guides you in getting out of the trench. It's a pathway out of the trench, which the trench is that negative self, icky feeling, emotional yuck.
Emotional yuck. Yes, I like that.
That's my
But
next
to your,
book
it gives
title,
you
Emotional Yuck. I love
that
it.
is a good. I like that's a good title. I would buy that book for sure.
Okay.
But I love how you put that. You know, it kind of gives you this pathway, and in what you just talked about is a lot about self talk. Do you find, somebody like yourself who is, one of just the most kindest, most positive people I know, and I'm going to keep saying that this whole episode,
Thanks.
because I mean it sincerely, not trying to stoke your ego, although I hope you feel good about it,
Yeah.
but it's genuine, and I think anybody who knows you would say the same thing. Do you find, because what you described, was a lot of self-talk. Do you find that you kind of have to consistently still work on the self-talk?
Absolutely.
Like it's not just automatic for you?
Absolutely. 100%. I'm always working on it. I have reminders up all over the place. I'm a person who believes in having quotes, and I love quotes, and I look at quotes and they help me out. So, I, can, can I get something? Is it okay if I get something to show you?
Please,
Okay.
please. Yes.
So,
I love it. We've got props, we've got
well,
books, we've got,
because
yeah.
I want to tell you. So a friend gave me this because she knows I love quotes, and so this is a pillow, and I want to read to you what it says. So it's in my office, and it's life is amazing, and then it's awful, and then it's amazing again, and in between the amazing and the awful, it's ordinary and mundane and routine. Breathe in the amazing, hold on through the awful, and relax and exhale during the ordinary. That is just living. Heartbreaking, soul healing, amazing, awful, ordinary living. And it's breathtakingly beautiful. And Ernst wrote that. And it's like on my pillow. It's
Wow.
there. So I have these things that,
Wow.
constantly remind me to do what I know helps, that I know makes me feel better and makes me be a better team member, be a better manager, be a better managed if I'm working on a project. Um, so yeah, but it's, you know, you're always reminding yourself, you're always, or I am always reminding myself about that. And I'm probably a little, Brett, I'm kind of a little crazy. So I love it. I have a book.
In all the best ways.
I have a book that's full. I have my goals here. I have everything in here that just kind of gets me through, and I call it my toolbox. So I'm always looking at my toolbox. I'm always looking at the assets that I have and the tools that I need to sharpen. So I'm hyper aware of what I need to do to be better. And I'm to be better in the sense of, for me, maybe not necessarily for anyone else, but for me, what I need to work on, because I'm constantly working. I'm
Right.
totally not perfect. Nobody is, but
Right.
I try to live up to the standard of being that positive, being that smiling person. Because, and here's the reason I do it, because I know that when I'm around people like that, it lifts me up. It gives me a boost. And we are living in a world right now that is full of negativity. It's everywhere. It's on the news.
Yes.
It's everywhere. People are upset. People are stressed. People are dying. Um, they're checking themselves out because the world sucks right now. So, what we need to do, in my opinion, is look at the amazing aspect of life. Life is amazing. We're so lucky that we live in the United States, that we have the ability to do what we want to do, um, and not let that negativity get us down. Focusing on the positive, focusing on our assets.
I love that. And what I see is you've surrounded yourself with these elements that have to, whether consciously or subconsciously, feed into your own self-talk. Just that pillow being
Absolutely.
in your office. You can't
Absolutely.
help but see it, right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. And
And what you just said,
it's not about
oh, go ahead.
ego either. Everyone wants to feel good, but I don't, for me, it's about just self-preservation, because it can, what happens when you go down the rabbit hole? You get deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper. One little thing, you talked about one little thing can cause you to go into the rabbit hole negative, and then all of a sudden everything
Yes.
just opens up and you're down. So when that one little thing happens and I start going down, I've got a ladder that pulls me back up because
Yeah.
I'd rather be up here.
I think right. And I think that ladder is what's so important. And that's why I wanted to kind of call out the fact that you're surrounding yourself with these things that are positive to you, that remind you, because like we talked about, it takes more effort to get there than, if our default was this super positive, if we were defaulted there, we wouldn't need these other tools. But that's not really our human nature. So we need to like do these things for ourselves so that we can work on it and feed it to ourselves.
Right. Meditation, huge, you know?
Meditation. Yes, yes. So in your pillow actually speaks to this a bit. And you started talking about this a bit too with the news. I want to call out, I kind of promised in the beginning of the podcast, like, which we're not doing at all, but is that we wouldn't just be saying fluffy things, which in no way are we doing.
Right.
But one thing I want to really ground people with who, especially anybody that might be skeptical or like, yeah, hear this, right? Could you talk about the difference between, positive thinking and unrealistic thinking, like seeing the world in, through rose-colored glasses when really, there is a reality, and how do you balance the two?
I think it's just being aware and I've been accused of being Pollyanna, if that's a bad thing. Like you're so Pollyanna, and people don't believe that Pollyanna is real. People think it's fake. People think it's, I don't care what they think. That's, I want to be Pollyanna. I want to have a better outlook. But, you still have to have those crucial conversations and those difficult conversations, and things come up. And so you do it by, and I sort of already hinted on that, acknowledging the emotions. If you're with somebody else who sets you off, acknowledging the emotions and having those difficult conversations and bringing it up, but you don't have to do it in a negative way. You can do it in a positive way, and you can do it by affirming somebody first. Like, hey, Brett, you know what I really appreciate about you is that you're so passionate about what you do and what you believe in. But I don't think that we're necessarily on the same line of how you do something. So whatever that's, I'm trying to be, whatever it is. But you can be positive before you get to you just can't say, Brett, you suck, and I don't know what the hell you're doing, you know?
Right. Where a lot of people unfortunately are, I
Yeah.
think.
Certainly I grew up in an environment like that. I mean, my dad was tough on me. My dad was like, what the hell are you doing? God damn it. Excuse me. I shouldn't talk, or I shouldn't swear, but I didn't like that. That didn't feel good to me.
Yeah.
But, mentors who have always been acknowledging like, hey, Bob, this is really good, but this is something that you might need to work on, or you do need to work on. And let me tell you why you need to work on it. So having the acknowledging the emotions. The other thing that I try to do is prepare for everything. So if I know that it's going to be a sticky situation, if I know that something's going to happen, or you can even sense, Brett, like you can sense people's attitudes, you can sense people's opinions, even a stranger, you can sense sort of where they're going to be. So you can prepare in your head of what that's going to look like. And before, entering that difficult conversation or even entering that person's space, you can prepare yourself of what may happen.
Right.
And focusing on solutions instead of problems is huge for me. Like everything is a problem, right? Everything could be a problem, but let's focus on the solution. Identify the problem. Okay, we've identified the problem. What is the solution that we can come up with to fix the problem? A problem isn't bad. Actually, a problem's a great thing to have if you look at it that way, because it's a challenge. It's an opportunity to grow. It's an opportunity to learn something new. So that's what I'm talking about, being positive. Being positive doesn't mean
Right.
anti-Maine, life is a banquet. Being positive is how you choose to look at things. Everything is, instead of a problem or an issue, everything is more of a opportunity.
An opportunity. I like how you said that.
And think about when you're in a company that I've worked in companies like this. You only hear from your boss when something goes wrong. You never hear from them
Right.
if it goes right. And so you have no opportunity to understand or to learn or to grow. It's like, you did this wrong. Well,
Right.
how does that make you feel? Do you want to work for that company? Instead of having somebody say, Brett, you're doing amazing things. Thank you for your contributions. I, I'm I'm having a problem with this situation of what you're doing here. But help me understand your thought process and what goes into this, because this is what I'm thinking, and this is what I'd like to see.
Yeah. That's such an emotionally intelligent approach. And I think, what I've heard, and it feels like a theme, because you mentioned this when we were talking about self-talk too. And then now, just as you talked about being aware, having this awareness of this is perhaps going to be a difficult conversation and I'm going to approach it differently. There's sort of this awareness factor to what you're talking about. And I think you had mentioned it just before we jumped into this question, that like mindfulness, and I'm sure meditation, right, must play a role in this in some capacity in order to have that awareness of whether it's awareness of emotions or awareness of your own self-talk. Do you see the same things in terms of, it feels like I love mindfulness meditation, huge fan, practice daily. And there's often used this analogy of like, you're kind of catching these thoughts as they go, if you can get yourself centered. And that's kind of what I'm hearing you say in some of this is like, there's this very first, before you can do anything else, you've got to have a level of awareness.
Yeah, so let me tell you something that just happened to me. These things happen all the time in life, but so I'm in Grand Rapids. I'm at a hotel. I'm getting on an elevator, and there's a family in front of me with a little girl. She's probably 4, and the elevator opens, and there's a bunch of people in there, and the little girl kind of pauses, and the dad says, "Oh, we'll take the next elevator," but a woman is holding it. And then the girl jumps in the elevator and starts to close. And the dad's like, hey, 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 and gets the little girl. And the woman who was holding the elevator is like, you've got to decide if you're coming or not. She would just like immediately.
Geez.
So what happens when that happens? So immediately it's natural. I wanted to say, hey, I got like pissy in my head, right? So what
Right.
happened is I took a deep breath. And I do this a lot. Breathing is hugely important for me. I take a deep breath, and then I started thinking about her, and I just smiled at her, and I thought, I don't know what she's going through. She could have just been
Mm.
diagnosed with cancer. She could have just lost her mother. She could have just lost her father. I have no idea what's going on in her life that caused her to react that way. So I'm going to give her
Right.
grace. I'm going to give her grace. I'm going to take a deep
Right.
breath and give her grace. Same thing when you're driving and somebody cuts off, or does something. The reaction is like, which is how ePIFanyNow started, by the way. But it's you give them grace, because what good does it do to do anything but give grace, but be kind?
Why deprive them of the grace
Right,
just because perhaps in that situation
right,
they deprived someone else of that grace?
right.
Why deprive them?
So then it's a chain
You don't
reaction,
know.
right? So then all of a sudden,
Right.
so then all of a
Right.
sudden, and I noticed when I got in the elevator, I was getting tight, and I was getting angry, and I was getting pissy, as I like to
Mm.
say. And then I just breathed, and I started thinking about her, and I do this a lot, but I started blessing her in my mind. I was like, whatever she's going through, I really hope that she's going to be okay. And I started, and it made me
Yeah.
feel better. I don't know if it made her feel better or not, but it didn't matter. It wasn't about her. It was about me. It's not about them. It's about me and how I feel inside.
Right.
If you have an employee that's not meeting your expectations and constantly disappoints you, so you got to have that conversation with them, but you can do it in a good, positive, constructive way. It's an opportunity for them to
Right.
learn. And if they don't want to learn, then maybe they're not in the right position. And it's okay to say, I don't think this is going to work out.
Right. But it's a different approach. And I'm glad you brought back up kind of the workplace too, because you had mentioned, in your childhood, perhaps you kind of experienced some of what you wouldn't have wanted to experience in terms of, positivity and kindness and how it shows up. And early in my career, I had a situation where, that was kind of the case for me, where it was a very negative situation. And it was those conversations of like, why the hell are you doing this? Or aren't you doing that? Right. And for everybody, right? Even the top performers, it was just kind of globally, you know, it was an emotionally abusive environment. And that really got me set off on this path of like this, you know, that's when I really started discovering, you know, self-help books and you know, that's where I got into the power of positive thinking, right? I realized nobody's coming to swoop me up and save me from this place, right? So what can I do here to, you know, kind of combat this environment that I'm in? And so I wanted to share that because I think you and I kind of share that experience in different ways. And you know, shifting into the workplace, that was a huge part of when I founded Exploring Potential, right? It was like, how can I be the polar opposite of that experience and, you know, cultivate positivity and, you know, make that be a part of the core of who we are. And so I want to ask you, you know, in the workplace, how can positive thinking from your perspective help shape a workplace culture?
It kind of goes back to, you know, what I said is that, you know, in work, you're working towards something, you're doing something, you've got goals and objectives, and you're not always going to hit the target. So being able to look at the target and say, so we didn't hit it, but let's open communication, I think, is the biggest thing. Having an open, direct
Yes.
communication with everyone, with your employees, with your boss, with everyone, and saying, okay, you know, never assume. You know, that's something that always gets me in trouble too, is when I assume. I try not to assume anything. I ask a lot of questions, and you're not always going to work with those people who share your positivity. You're going to encounter people who are the opposite. And it's interesting to me how one negative attitude can actually shift a culture. But at the same time, one positive attitude can shift the culture too. Um,
Right.
it's not easy being positive. It's much easier to be negative. It's much easier to be negative. It,
Sure.
but what are the ramifications of being negative? What does that look like in your head, to your soul, to your relationships with your people that are closest? Um, and it becomes a habit, and it becomes a chronic habit. And I don't know, it just, to me, it's like, I don't, life's precious and short. I don't want to waste my time feeling negative. I want to enjoy my life and, um, you know, get rid of that as much as possible. However, contrast is really important in life. So I think contrast is huge. So I know what it feels like to not be positive, and I don't like it, but I know what it's like to be positive. So when I'm positive, it feels great. But that negative helps me appreciate the positive even more.
Mm.
Does that make sense?
That's well put. It does make sense. There's this balance because, and it goes back to awareness, right? The fact that you're able to discern negative and positive
Right,
has a certain level of awareness to it
right.
and mindfulness. And workplaces are diverse, you know, and to your point earlier, you never know what's going on in somebody else's life. So it
Yeah,
could be, you know, yeah, somebody's being really cranky or perpetually cranky, right? But we don't know what they're going through either, you
yeah,
know, so it's easy to sit back and say, wow, they're just a jerk or, you know, whatever else. But instead, it's kind of smile into it, right? What can you bring to the table? Because you know, if we show up the way we want those around us to show up, we can help make that impact, right?
right. Yeah. And you know, one of the things is I suggest too is just being self-aware. Just being self-aware of how you feel. I shared with you today that the last week I've been feeling overstressed. I've been feeling like I'm doing a lot, and I'm stressed, and I wasn't feeling good, and I started getting in that negative space. So what I did is I took the day off and I booked a facial and I went and got a massage. Do I have time to do that? No, not really. But I don't have time not to do that either, right? I don't have time not to do
Yes.
that because now, since I did that, I'm in such a better perspective. I'm in such a better frame of mind. So I often ask people when I'm leading workshops is, what is it that you do that makes you feel better? Is it a walk? Is it, another thing I like to do is go for a drive in the country with the windows down and no music, just take a ride in the country and just
Oh, yes.
see something new. And that always puts me in a different frame of mind. But taking time out to do that,
Right.
because if you don't, then it's bad for you and it's bad for everyone around you. And that's a lot of us are stressed out to the max. Part of that is because we're not taking time for ourselves or listening to ourselves or even knowing ourselves. I know a lot of people that don't even know themselves enough to know
Yes.
what they need or what they want.
To know they need that.
Yeah,
Yeah. That's it. I think it's important to recognize that it's not selfish to fill your own bucket.
that's
In
right.
fact, it's more selfless, so if driving through the country, right, I know my wife is incredibly understanding when I need to do, I love doing that exact thing.
Do you? Yeah.
So we share that, Bob.
Yeah.
Yes, 100%. And, I think where we've come in our relationship at home is, those aren't selfish acts. Like, hey, I need some time. I know the kids are home. But hey, to be my best self, like because you took care of yourself, we and our listeners get the best of Bob today, right? You have refreshed, you've filled that bucket. And I think sometimes people hesitate because it almost feels selfish. And I try not to even use that word anymore because something like filling your bucket, doing something that fills you up like that, that's what brings you into the next week or the next challenge or the next thing. And if you're
Yeah.
not doing that, you can't show up as your best
I
self.
love how you talked about relationships too. Marriage is, it's so important. I just heard somebody, I can't remember who said this, but they said it's not a 50-50. Sometimes it's 85,
Yes.
35. So uh, it
Yes.
because sometimes you come home from work and you just don't have it in you to do it, to do anything with the kids or make dinner or
Yeah.
anything. So it's when you can be communicative with your partner enough to say, I, I need help tonight. I need some time
Yeah.
away. I need my own space, but I'll have you when you need that too. And if you're both there,
Yep.
maybe it's just like, okay, well, we've got this short amount of energy together. Let's do something together that will make it okay. But stepping away and being away, and I need my space. Like I need my time. I need my time.
Yes.
That's so important to me, um, to
Yes.
rebalance and to refocus. And a lot of people don't have that, but it's so important. You've got to take 10 minutes for yourself, do something for yourself every single day. That could be even self
Right.
talk.
Yes. That's a great point. It doesn't have to be a drive through the country. It doesn't have to be extra effort. It can be 10 minutes of talking to yourself in a kind and compassionate way,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yep. Yep.
Love that. And I think, was it, Lizzie, my wife and I were just talking about exactly what you were talking about, that relationships aren't always 50-50. I want to say it was maybe Brene
I
Brown.
think it was. Remember,
Yeah, was it
I
Brene
think
Brown?
it was. Yeah. And it
Yes.
made so much
Where it's
sense to
like,
me. Like, yeah,
yes, we've started using some of that language, like where we say like I'm at like a 20%, like
right.
I need you to do bedtime tonight because I need a little bit of that recovery.
Yeah.
So I'm so glad you brought that up because I thought that was a very powerful, as far as relationships go. It doesn't even have to be a life partner or a romantic relationship. I mean, honestly, just relationships with other people, having that communication of saying, this is where I'm at right now, and I'm being transparent with you.
And I think it's really important to bring it into the office too, because you're not always going to be 100% at the office, right? So
Yes,
so
yes,
being able to be, sometimes, I've done this in the past. I've called in sick where I wasn't sick. I just needed a mental health day. I just needed a break.
yep,
I just needed time. And I think it's important to, I think companies should look at that and say, okay, take the time that you need because I need you to be, at 100%. But I know you're not going to
yes,
be there today. So take the time to give what you need.
yes,
um, and if they're 85%, then say I'll take 85% and I'll help you along the way, right? We're all in this together.
yes.
We got to help each other more, I think.
Oh, that's so well put, and I couldn't agree more on bringing it into the office. Now, obviously, that's depends on the company culture, depends on that situation. But to your point, I have the same hopes that more companies will embrace the idea of we take mental health days very seriously here because it's like, why put somebody in a position where they're not going to be their best self
Right.
if they just need a day, right? Like you don't call in, we don't do like sick days, like that. It's like don't call in sick. You can just say, hey, I need some time.
I'm not feeling it
And
today.
yeah,
I need to figure this out. And
yes.
yeah, and then you're better the next day. I wish companies would do that, more.
I think it's being more and more, at least from our experience, right? It's becoming more and more common. But it also, I get for some of the larger machines, it's hard to slow that machine down enough to adapt to something like that. I definitely we're seeing it. It's more popular than it's been in the last several years. But yeah, I wish it would speed up a little bit.
Yeah, right.
Just a little more. So while we're kind of talking on the work subject, so a lot of our listeners, our followers, might have retail operations or customer facing, guest facing relationships at their front line or even at the executive level. What is, from your perspective, the impact of positive thinking on that customer or guest service experience?
Absolutely everything. Listen, customer service is the most important thing. And I love good customer service. And I think good customer service is being an active listener, a good listener, uh, and being genuinely there to help your customer, to put your customer's needs first. What do they need and how can I help them? That's what you're in business for, right? To make a difference.
Yes.
I hope, anyways. A lot of people are in business to make a lot of money, which is great. I don't have a problem with that. But if you're going to do it, do it in a way that can make you even more money, because good customer service, we talk about this often. We'll go to restaurants in particular, and we'll go to a restaurant that may be subpar food, but the customer service is so incredible. We'll go back to that restaurant because the customer service is so incredible, versus going to the restaurant where the food is incredible, the customer service is horrible, right?
Yes.
So to me, customer service is everything. And I think we're in an epidemic right now of bad customer service everywhere. It's rampant. I can't tell you how many times I go through places and check out, and I don't even get a hello or goodbye, or it's just, and it puzzles me. It just is kind of like, what? Like, really?
It impacts. Oh, go ahead. I'm
well,
sorry.
no,
I didn't mean to cut
I just
you off
had
there.
an experience with that with a big box store. We bought a grill, and the grill wouldn't fit into our car. We have an SUV, and I thought the grill would fit into the back, and it didn't. So I took it back in, and I said, "Hey, this won't fit into the back of our car. Can I just leave it here for a couple hours? I'm going to get my buddy to see if he can bring his truck." And they're like, "No, we don't do that."
Unreal.
And I was like, "What?" And she's like, "Do you need to talk to a manager?" And she was kind of snippy. And I was like,
"Oh my,
yeah, I'd like to talk to a manager." So I talked to the manager, and the manager said, "No, we're told not to do that." And I said, "Well, that really sucks, because I'll probably go get my grill from somewhere else,
right."
And
Process a return and go somewhere else.
And it was just sort of mystified, like, really? Wow.
Unreal.
But then I found out later that they actually do that. They just had no space for it. But if they would have said, "We have really no space for it right now," I would have been happy to say, "Oh, what if we put it back on the floor?" Because it was like a model.
Right.
We could put it back on the floor. It's fine. Just, reimburse me, and then I'll come back and get it. But instead, I left with a really kind of bad feeling about that box store.
That's unfortunate. And to your point, not uncommon these days. That's honestly, customer experience, customer service is one of the most common things that we're producing training on for different industries, everything else, because it's so critical. And it plays into one thing that we have noticed is people these days are seeking an experience, whatever it is, whether it's a shopping experience or an entertainment experience. We do a lot of work with movie theaters, and, a lot of people thought, with streaming, right, through COVID, like movie theaters are going away. And that's been proven so wrong, because people want the experience. Yes, you can watch it at home, but they're there for the experience. And if you don't have that good customer service, that's a huge part of the experience. To your point, you went to a restaurant, you would take subpar food, or let's say in a movie theater setting, even subpar seating, right? Because now they're all luxury seats. If the service was top notch, you would take that because of how it makes you feel, right?
Well, I can't believe you would have anyone on here that would say differently, but would you go into a place, a store, a restaurant, a movie theater, and have people just treat you bad, versus going into somewhere and having people treat you like you are the most important person in their day? What does that do? It's like, wow, you're like, I love, we have a couple of restaurants in town that we go to, because every time we go in, they're like, hey guys, how you doing? Good to see you again. Listen, we're full right now, but hey, let me get you something. Let me get you want some water as you wait? You want a drink? How can I help? How can I make this experience better for you? So what does that do?
Yes.
That makes me think, they care about me. They care about me. I want to promote them. I want to help them. So that's a part of being positive.
And that's the difference it makes for the customer. And that can only show up if you've got positivity in your staff, a staff that's thinking positive, a staff that's willing to kind of step up and help create that experience, which doesn't always happen just naturally, right? Yeah, you might get lucky and hire just the friendliest people ever. But it's more systematic than that in a lot of ways. It's embedding in people like, this is how we treat our guests. And then you are the perfect example of how that comes full circle of that's helping the business, right? We help our employees create that experience. Our customers are going to reward us with their loyalty.
Treating your customers, it's the same if you're in leadership. Treat your employees as they're your customers, because you treat your employees good, they're going to treat you good. They're going to treat the company good. It's all just it's a circle, right? You treat people well, you treat people good, they're going to return it. You treat people bad, you treat people indifferent, they're going to return it. That's why a lot of people are so unhappy in life right now. They're working for companies that just don't care about them. They're just filling a niche. They're just filling the cog in the hole. But I encourage people to look at it differently. Like, you're making a difference.
Yes, 100%. And not just, there's a ripple effect difference too, right? It's not just a difference for an individual. It's also a difference for that individual and every individual that person interacts with.
Right.
So it's, it becomes compounded in that way as well.
Right. Real quick, just kind of going off of that, my mom, I learned a lot from my mom. My mom is just probably the kindest person I know. She's always been kind. She's lovely to everyone. But that didn't mean that my mom wasn't, I don't want to say terse, but I'm trying to think of a word, firm, right? There was expectations with her. And the biggest thing for me was ever disappointing my mom, doing something that would disappoint her. And when you lead with that, when you have that, your staff, your employees, they're not going to want to disappoint you because they care so much about you, because they know that you make them feel good. You make them feel like they're valuable and worthy and part of the culture and part of the organization. And they're going to want you to succeed. So,
right. They feel like they're sharing in the success when you treat them that way.
Yeah.
They feel engaged and more dedicated to the company. We see that all the time. One of the big services or products we offer, it's called our Welcome Series, and it's the way we position it is like, this is the first thing that you want your employees to see. Get them engaged and dedicated to your company right away. And what it consists of is messaging around, this is who we are as a culture. This is how we show up, right? And the more you can kind of embed that in somebody right away, the more loyal they're going to be to that company because they're bought in. They can see the company cares. And obviously, some of what they stand for needs to be caring about their employees, in order for that to work. But it's kind of exactly that approach, right? You're giving to them in that way,
and
and they're
establishing that
returning it.
positive framing right from the very beginning. So there's no
Yes.
questions. Like, this is your expectation. This is what we expect from
Yes.
you. This is, right from the get-go.
Yes. Yeah, that's a huge thing, expectation setting. What as we wind down here, Bob, what are some practical tips? And you've shared some throughout throughout the episode, but what are some practical tips for cultivating a positive mindset, whether, in our lives or at work or wherever?
Finding a mentor, finding people that you look up to, finding people that you would like to emulate, that you like to be around, surrounding yourself by things that motivate you, whether it be words, people, items, um, creating an environment that is a good environment that can host what you are all about, and and maintaining consistency too. Like I said, I'm not always positive, and that's when I have to take a break, and allowing myself to take a break, and not beat myself up for it. It, I think people need to rebalance. It's huge. Plug in or unplug, plug in and unplug, constantly doing that. I think that's important. But for me, what it was is seeing the people in the newsroom that I emulated, because that was sort of my first job, seeing the people in the newsroom that I emulated and seeing the ones that I didn't want to be like or didn't like them, and weeding that out. And I also don't give any energy to people like that. And it's interesting, if you ignore it, it's like a bee, it just kind of goes away. um,
Right.
I mean, if you
And
work
and that
with,
can
if you
be
even if you
just as
work
much
with
a
it, I have to
motivator.
tell you, even if you work with it, even I've had supervisors that were night and day different, um, and it's not been easy. But just allowing them not to get to me, not to have an effect on me, because everything's energy, right? And we all have energy. So
Yes.
what is the energy that I'm going to allow into my life? And you said it earlier, it's all in here. We're in control of everything we do, see, hear, smell, taste, everything. We right here. So how are we going to allow it to affect us? And what are we going to do to exercise that to make that stronger? So when we're put in that situation, how do we get out of it? What are our escape mechanisms? For me, it's breathing. For me, it's like just breathing and letting it go.
Breathing, you've got your toolkit, you've got your pillow, you know, that. And I like what you said about modeling, right? And not just modeling those that you want to model after who are positive, but almost I'm going to dub a new term here, anti-modeling, right? Of I don't want to be that,
Yeah.
like this is that's kind of what happened to me, in that first job I described, early in my career. It was like, all right, I don't know exactly what I want to be, need to be, but I know it's not this. I know it needs to be far from this.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
That's Well, Bob, you've been so generous with sharing your time, with sharing your knowledge, your experience, your tips. This is the part of the show where I do want to pause and give you a few moments to plug whatever is most important to you right now. So, if there's a company, initiative, idea, nonprofit, cause, you name it, I want to just stop here and give you this opportunity to speak on whatever that is.
Well, first of all, I want to say thank you, because you are a person who I consider a role model. Uh, every time I'm with you, I come away better because I listen to you and I love what you do and I love how you're changing the world and make it better. So thank you for that. And I think that if I was to leave with anything, a message, it's just um, take time out for you, who's ever watching this. Take time out for you and do something kind for you, because you live with yourself 24/7. You can't escape yourself. So think about what you're thinking about, and determine if it's something that you really like or don't like. And if you don't like it, then you can change it. You have the power to do that. So I don't want to promote anything per se. I just want to promote the possibility of being kind to yourself, and the possibility of being kind to others, because what happens when you do that, it all comes back to you. It all comes back
Yes.
and it floods to you. So
That's beautiful. That is beautiful. And I shouldn't even be surprised that you weren't going to plug anything, even, an initiative or something like that, even though I know you're involved in so many positive, amazing, plug-worthy things.
yeah.
That is so Bob Hoffman to me, for you to leave us with such a beautiful message. And I appreciate your kind words as well. Hopefully it goes without saying, I look up to you. You are, when I knew I wanted to do an episode on the power of positive thinking, I mean, probably before I even finished the thought, you popped into my head, right?
Awesome.
You are that positive model for me. And I know I'm not the only one. I know there's going to be people listening, watching this, that are going to say, oh yeah, he is that for me as well. And that's the light that you bring into this world. And I'm just so grateful for you taking the time today. I feel the exact same. I always feel energized when I get to speak with you, and it's just been an absolute pleasure. I want to take a moment here to kind of give a quick reminder of some of the key takeaways. And Bob, you can, before I totally let you off the hook, if I miss one, you jump right in. So I think, to summarize what you had just said, self-care is a huge piece. Looking out for yourself, taking that time to kind of fill that bucket back up. Managing our self-talk, which needs to start with awareness. But then, once we're aware, also talking ourselves up. So using self-talk in our favor, increasing that awareness of our emotions we had talked about. So, whether it's positive or like the points that you made about maybe there's I don't want to say negative, but maybe there's a difficult conversation you need to have at work. So just being aware of that, raising your awareness and going into that mindfully. And then surrounding yourself with mentors and with models. And again, I'll use the new term that I made up that you didn't say, but I'll throw in there, the anti-model, right?
Yeah.
Did I leave anything out? I mean, for our viewers, for our listeners, I really want them to be able to take some of this away. And you've really left us with some incredible gems.
Focus on the solution, positive framing, honesty with empathy. You hit it all. You hit it all. Just coming at it from a different positive.
Amazing. Well, Bob, I want to thank you so much for taking the time and hanging with us today. And I want to thank our listeners. Thank you for joining us this episode, and we'll look forward to seeing you on the next one. Have a great day.